Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So, full moon of February, and by our tradition, our Buddhist tradition, the full moon of February, very rarely, sometimes it happens in March, because it's a lunar observance. Sometimes that it can happen, very rare. But the full moon of February traditionally is held as what's referred to as Magha Puja. And my understanding of the name Magha, it's the name of a constellation of stars that appears in the sky near the moon, near the full moon in this month. So it doesn't. Apart from that, I don't know any meaning of Magha. So it was under that moon, under that month, that this an event is traditionally held as having taken place in the time of the Buddha. And just as a brief history, because it's not meant to be a history lesson. But it was within the first year of the Buddha's dispensation after his full awakening. And we traditionally hold that as being in May, so it was the about 9 months later. And the Buddha was dwelling in Rajgaha, present-day Rajgir in India. And the full moon, and he was dwelling along with other samanas in a grove, the Velavana, which is translated as a bamboo grove there, which was a gift from King Bimbisara, if I remember correctly. King was a very devout follower, devotee, student of the Buddha. And it's near there, it's not many miles away, that the Vulture's Peak is located, which is also referred to many times in our tradition. It was a place of retreat for the Buddha. And so it's an important site. It's on the pilgrimage trail. If you go to India to visit the holy sites, it's very much a part of that series of places that are recommended to visit. And tradition tells us that without prior arrangement, 1,250 samanas, it's said that they were monks, all gathered. As I said a moment ago, without prior arrangement. Now, approximately 1,000 of those were disciples of, or former disciples of the Kassapa brothers. And so they were already a group of people that tended to be together quite a lot. So it's to me, it's not so much of a stretch to think that that group could have been deciding to come. And then there were they say another approximately 250. And they came to gather around the Buddha They had heard he was there, or they knew he was there, and they gathered around their teacher. And these were all monks who had left home and gone forth into the monastic life under the Buddha, so directly with him. And the Buddha, what was recorded is the teaching that the Buddha offered. And what's recorded is a very pithy, very, very brief teaching referred to as the Ovada Patimokkha. And this was long before the set of rules that developed over the years for the monks, and then also later the bhikkhunis, the nuns. Those rules weren't, I believe, if I remember correctly, they probably weren't really established for about 20 years. The 227 training precepts. Because in the Buddha, what we're told is that he didn't see any need to, quote unquote, lay down rules. People, those earliest disciples, they were just living the life. There was a natural refraining from doing things that were unacceptable as a samana, and it was only as the sangha grew that the Buddha saw need, and he made that very clear. Because fairly early on, people suggested to the Buddha to lay down a framework of rules, and he said, "No, the time's not there yet. The time will come, but not yet." However, on this full moon in Rajgir, he recited the following. Sabbapa passa akaranang, not doing any evil. Kusalasu pasampada, to be committed to the good. Sachita pariyodapanang, to purify one's mind. Etang buddhana sasanang, these are the teachings of all Buddhas. Kanti paramang tapo titika, patient endurance is the highest practice, burning out defilements. Nibbanang paramang vadanti Buddha, the Buddhas say Nibbana is supreme. Nahi pabhajito parupagati, not a renunciant is one who injures others. Samano hoti parang vihetayanto, whoever troubles others can't be called a monk. Anupavado anupagato, not to insult and not to injure. Patimokkhe cha sangvaro, to live restrained by training rules. Bhatanyuta cha bhatasming, knowing one's measure at the meal. Pantancha sayanasana, retreating to a lonely place. Adicite cha ayogo, devotion to the higher mind. Etang buddhana sasanang, these are the teachings of all Buddhas. So as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, it's a rather brief, it's a simple teaching. These are not, one could say they're not complicated, or one might even look at it as being so simple that, these 1,250 samanas, because what I may have forgotten to mention a moment ago is that they were considered also fully enlightened awakened beings. Arahants had come together. And you've got the Buddha saying, don't do anything unskillful. Don't do anything evil. So I think the word here that they've used in the translation evil is papa, evil. Be committed to good. Kusala is like wholesome. To do wholesome things. You would think, okay, you've got 1,250 arahants here. If they were doing things that were unwholesome, how did they realize nibbana? Then the next line also, to purify the mind, purify one's mind. So it's interesting. I find it interesting. Then he goes on into more reflective, into talking about patience. Patient endurance is the highest practice. And it's dealing with not behaviors, where the first two lines are very much around behavior, and then it gets in patient endurance. And for me, this is where this teaching, I think that's probably the aspect of this teaching which I find most helpful in my own practice. Patient endurance. And I think it's important to consider what patience is. You can't put a fixed label, I would say. In some ways, you could say there's different types of patience. I think I've reflected on this before here, that in my earlier days of monastic life, and I've heard a reflection on patience, and the elder giving the talk said, in their understanding of the Buddha's way of reflecting on patience or holding patience is that it's not the patience of, I can wait longer until this comes. I can wait until the weather gets warmer, or I can wait for the number 73 bus in London. You can be standing there on Oxford Street, and I can wait because I know another one will come along. In fact, 3 or 4 will come along. And so that's one type of patience. That's the type of patience that I grew up with. Is that, be patient, it'll come. It'll get there. But the elder that was giving the talk that I heard these many years ago said, no, that's not what the Buddha was pointing to. And the Buddha was pointing out the patience that either it comes or not. Might come, might not. And so the patience of, okay. And so, it's an interesting reflection. My mind at the time said, no, that's not patience. That's giving up. And then it was a few years later, and another one of our elders in a completely different country, different part of the world, said virtually the same thing. I was like, no, really? Come on. No patience is just willing to wait until the thing you want to happen happens. And then it happened again. Somebody completely outside of our tradition was reflecting on this, on the Buddha's teachings on patience. And so I started really reflecting on this, and just contemplating, well, what's that like? What would that be like to be able to just let go of that expectation, to let go of that need for any state of being, any experience, any thing to arrive. And for those of us, there's nobody living here right now who's been here for less than a couple of months. And most of us obviously longer than that. People that have been practicing, living a life of goodness, of also restraint of the senses. Everybody living here in the minimum eight precepts. Living with form, living with guidelines, rules, a lot of giving up. And so I think we all, if we reflect on this, see the value of that, being able to not get what we want. Patience, needing to wait for things to happen, because we can't just do it when we want. We need to wait for the bell to ring, wait for the meal, wait for certain things to happen. Inner patience, patient with ourselves, patient with ourselves, patient with other people. To be patient, taking the reflection I mentioned earlier, and not the patience of waiting until what we want to happen happens. So let's say with other people, say, well, I'll be patient with them. If we maybe using the old way that I would consider patience is that, well, I'll be patient because one day, sooner or later, they'll act the way I want them to act. Now, when you hear these words, even just saying them, I kind of go, no, that's not peace. That's still trying to get what I want. That's still needing things to be the way I want for me to be fully at ease, for me to be happy. And this isn't it. That's a very fragile, conditional well-being. That's a well-being based on something that it's not lasting. So let's say that I do think that way towards a particular person, and then they do fall in line with my idea of the way people should act, and then I feel happy, and I feel whatever positive thing I'm feeling, and then they go back to doing the other way. Or somebody else joins the community and starts doing that. So what am I going to do? Go around just in this state of quasi-patience, waiting for everybody to act the way I want them? Forget it. Fortunately, I see the folly in that. That's not, well, by my understanding of Nibbana, for what that's worth, that can't be Nibbana. That's not ultimate peace. That seems like just perpetual dukkha. Trying to get what we want. Just change the object. Is it a person? Is it a schedule? Is it like I mentioned, weather a little while ago? Is it just anything? Or when we get the way we want, I'll just patiently endure my defilements until I become pure, until I'm only behaving the way I think a perfected human being should be. So to apply that patience, and okay, I'll keep trying, keep modulating my behaviors to be in line, to be in harmony, to be helpful, to be, as it's often referred to in some of our scripture in the chanting, that field of merit, punya keta, to develop habits that are a field of merit, a field of goodness. So reflecting on patience in this way, and then that brings up that word acceptance of the way things are now. To fully accept the way others are now, ourself, the situation, the weather, the routine, the monastery, the world, the pandemic, you name it. And as a reminder, acceptance does not mean approval. To accept what's present, what's going on, is not necessarily approval. Might be. And I think that's a very important point. So maybe I'm abiding in patience, applying patience to situation that might be irritating, painful. Maybe even the mind saying things like, it's unbearable. Or seeing something happen. Maybe we hear something that's just really shocking or sad, or it's like, as you all know, I keep an ear out, an eye out for the news on the pandemic, so I can help as much as possible to shape things here in as safe a way as we can. But in looking at those things, I see other headlines. I don't read the articles typically, but it's like today I saw a headline, more than 300 schoolgirls in Nigeria kidnapped. So when I heard that, just the contraction of the heart. To receive that news. So at that moment, at that present moment, just talking about it now, the heart contracts. But that patience to be with the unwanted, the acceptance of that experience. But as I was saying a few minutes ago, but approval? Of course not. Horror. Absolute horror. So when you hear the Buddha speak about patient endurance is the highest practice, to be with the Paccuppanna Dhamma, the present moment reality. The fact that so much of the rest of this is around behaviors. So sometimes if we misinterpret patience and acceptance is like, okay, whatever, it's all good. That's the phrase of the last 10 years, I suppose. Oh, it's all good, it's all good. Is it? Is it all good? I wouldn't say so. It's not all something that's good. There are behaviors that are harmful, and this is what the Buddha is. Not a renunciant, not a spiritual seeker, one who injures others. One who, with intention, does things that are painful, intentionally painful for others. There's always accidents. Accidents through body, speech. We can speak heedlessly, or just maybe not even heedlessly, but just in ways that are interpreted by others that are painful. Especially, we encountering people from different cultures, different languages. What's acceptable? In that country or in that region, or just it could be a linguistic thing. That's why being circumspect how we speak to one another, how we communicate. So things can happen, unintentionally, misunderstandings. And because there's no intention, no malintention, no bad intention, then the kamma, the vipaka kamma, the results of that action is very different. We had no intention. Same with getting hurt, physically hurt. Something's accidental. No intention. So then the kamma, negative kamma, needs intention. So even reading in our scriptures, accounts of things happening, accidental. And the Buddha said, there's not that negative resultant kamma. But we shouldn't ignore that. Just because something's an accident doesn't mean we should ignore that. It doesn't mean we won't feel it either. That we'll feel the results. If we realize that what we've said or done is painful for somebody else, accident or not. And I feel the onus on us as individuals to always be keeping an eye out, an ear out, to learn. That's why I love living in community. My habit was always to live either alone or just with one other person. I'm not drawn to living in groups, but the benefits that I've felt from living in community is that we have all these opportunities every day to learn from relating to other human beings, to learn how to be skillful, to learn how to be patient. I can be pretty patient living in a flat on my own, especially if you don't go out too much. Nobody disturbing my space, my routine, my food, my. And then we put ourselves into a situation like this. I think we're hovering around 30 people living here right now. And my own opinion is that we're doing a really good job. It's the harmony, the level of harmony is really, really lovely, palpable to me. Does that mean we never have disagreements? No. But we can disagree in harmony. We can be harmonious. We don't all have to think the same thing or have the same view or opinion, but we can live harmoniously. It's like you take a musical instrument, like with strings. All the different strings have a different note, but they are tuned, if they're tuned properly, in harmony. They are in tune, but they're different. Or you take an orchestra, carrying on with the musical analogy. You take an orchestra with all these different instruments. We have wind instruments, percussion, string, brass, and you have to play them quite differently, and you might have different notes and everything, but it all fits. It all fits together because people are listening to one another. They're watching one another. They're trying to not play so loud that they drown out the other musicians, the other instruments. Keeping an ear out, watching the conductor, watching the other string players, watching. If you ever watch an orchestra, I used to do this a lot in my previous life working in the theater. I used to love watching the orchestra when I had a chance. Watching, harmonizing. And so when we're on a spiritual path, as we all are, tuning in to the situation. Tuning in with our behaviors. That's why we have obviously very structured our patimokkha, and our rules are 8 precepts, 10 precepts. You have the Siladhara precepts, you have the Bhikkhu precepts. And they are a great harmonizing tool. We're all harmonizing through behaviors, greatly simplifying life. It gives us a common moral compass to follow. And with that comes, when we do this skillfully, with that comes great ease, lack of remorse, wholesome feelings. And then the lofty teachings, the profound teachings. I find when I just look at singular suttas or Dhamma themes that the Buddha offered that appear over and over again, as many of them do, just looking at them singularly, not complicated. It's not complicated. It's not something that we necessarily have to intellectually unravel. If it's complicated ideas, I don't find them. In the beginning, I did, because I was looking at them more in the macro. This body of teachings. Oh, you look at the book, and it's such a thick book, and it's got 150 suttas, and that's just one book, and you take a teaching like the Four Noble Truths. This teaching, this Ovada Patimokkha, it only took a couple of minutes to recite, and I was doing it in 2 languages. And the Buddha speaking to 1,250 arahants. Now maybe, during the gathering there was, I would hope that other things were said, maybe weren't recorded. I don't know. I don't want to second guess the Buddha. And if we think that at that time, and really up until not long ago, the teachings weren't so accessible. You even go back 60 years in a place where I come from, like California. I was only just born, but I hear that even with the beatnik era and the hippie era, where there was a lot of social changes to spiritual practice going on, a lot of opening, a lot of experimentation. It was very hard to find just even a Buddhist book in a place like California. Now you go into a bookstore and it's just a wall of, and not to mention what you find on the internet. So in the time of the Buddha, there's a lovely little vignette. I can't remember where it appears in the suttas of two disciples of the Buddha, traveling separately, and they come across each other. And one of them says, "Oh, have you heard the Buddha's latest, the teaching that the Buddha offered in such and such a place recently? Have you heard it? Have you heard it yet?" And he said, "No, Venerable Sir, I haven't." He said, "Okay, I'll teach it to you." And so it was this oral tradition, and so people would learn the teachings in that way. So they didn't have the Majjhima Nikaya book of suttas in their hand, or downloaded onto their Kindle or their phone. And then you have a big gathering like this, 1,250 coming together, and the Buddha, simple. So maybe the simple structure of it and the content maybe was also, I don't know, meant to just maybe give a framework for those samanas, for those disciples to then carry with them as they walked around India and nearby countries. Because this was before settled communities had really been established, as far as I'm aware, just in that first year. It took a while. It was very much wandering, and then just settling down for the rains retreat began at some point. So tonight we have an opportunity to reflect on this teaching. Obviously, I've narrowed the focus down to mostly around patience, patient endurance. And what can we learn from that practice? What can we develop from patient endurance, from that acceptance? And we'll only find out if we try. And every day we have these opportunities. And so tonight, offer these words as a reflection. And after the circumambulation, which we'll do in a few minutes, and we vigil carry on till midnight. Yeah, and we have right then and there, that's an opportunity. For those of us who maybe think that late night vigils are hard to bear, or painful, or useless, or right there we have the opportunity to practice patience. Patience maybe of doing something we don't see value in. So I'll offer that for reflection this evening.